All right, so you are in the culture part of this course for AMS Culture. And so we're going to look at some common language that we have at AMS. So we have slant, roar, and think. Slant is a simple technique to encourage and remind students to be attentive and active in class. Roar is our common language of our expectations for all of our AMS Tigers. And think just reminds us of a purposeful approach to avoid conflict, develop good habits of self-reflection prior to speaking, texting, posting, etc. While we want you to have some autonomy in your classroom, definitely to make your classroom your own, build your own classroom management, we also feel like there is a need school-wide for some common language. And that just lets all the students know that, you know, we're all unified on a few purposeful things. And slant, roar, and think fall into that category of this common language, because you'll hear us say slant to kids in the cafeteria, as well as we would expect you to ask kids in your classroom to slant or remind them to roar. You are the master of what you say until you utter it. Once you deliver it, you are its captive. Preserve your tongue as you do your gold and your money, because one word could bring disgrace and the termination of bliss. I love that comment. It's really more of a quote for students. It's kind of maybe a quote you'd want to utilize in your classroom when you're teaching your expectations, is that they need to be thoughtful with what they say and how they say it. And these are some of the practices that help us to do that. Think before you speak. You've probably heard of that before. And then roar, while it does mean to be respectful, on time, on task, accountable, and responsible, there are other roar posters throughout the buildings that outline how students are to roar when they're in the hallways. Some of those examples are keeping to the right, no food or drink, to walk with a purpose, etc. Whenever they are in large group places such as the gym, the amphitheater, or the cafeteria, depending on what they're there for. So depending on our purpose. So they need to be thoughtful about our purpose. They need to slant if it's more of a solemn assembly or an information giving event, as opposed to a pep rally. But they still need to be able to slant whenever there's a speaker speaking. And then again, slant, you can see slant, that's an acronym and what it stands for there. So we will provide copies of these posters for you for your classroom, or you can display your own version of them. Some people don't like the large posters because it takes up too much wall space, so they like something a little smaller. But we ask you to display these in your room, not only to communicate the expectations to the students, but also serve as a reminder for both you and us. Whenever we're feeling frustrated, go back to think, go back to slant, go back to asking the students, are they being respectful? Are they being accountable for their choices? So it reminds us all to use this common language. So on your time after this, after you watch this video in the course, you'll see that the digital copy of this slide presentation is linked there as well. There are two videos, this one, which is about think before you speak, and then another video from Edutopia about the 60-second slant strategy. And so I encourage you to watch those to get a little bit more understanding if you've never used either one of those structures in your classroom. We also have some behavior slides. I will tell you a portion of what, as far as slant and the behavior slides, it kind of comes from the work of Randy Spriggs. I think it's in the Champs book, if you've ever read that. But we just have some routine posters. These are not required, but they are available to you to serve as a structure in your classroom. We ask that if you do use them, that you don't take anything away from them, but you add something that maybe makes it a little more your own or fits your teaching style a little more. But there are procedures for the first 5 minutes. For taking notes, you'll see a lot of common language of be prepared, be productive, meet expectations, think, slant. Inside voices, that'd be an example of one that you might change. I know when I was a teacher, I used to tell my kids, I taught little kids, I taught 6th graders, but I would tell them to use a no-feel voice, because if you have your hand on your throat and you can feel the vibration of your voice, then you're speaking too loudly. So you might want to adjust that to whatever that means to you, to use an inside voice. Some expectations for independent work and during assessments. And again, if you've got some procedures about how to submit your assessment or what to do after an assessment, you might want to add that expectation to that time. And then last 5 minutes of class. Then the other part of our day, part of our culture, where we build culture, is our Tiger Time classroom. And that is your unique advisory class. So they are structured to mirror ideally to mirror the population of the school. So, for example, if economically disadvantaged kids make up 45% of our school, then economically disadvantaged kids make up 45% of your advisory, as well as ethnicity, pre-AP versus on level. We try to spread out kids who historically have had discipline issues or historically have attendance issues. But we use this time to provide structure, to build relationships, and to develop our students, both in their learning habits with school, but in other ways. So if you've got a student who is having some peer issues, you want to develop that student and help them to coach them on those things. If you've got a student who struggles with self-advocating and asking teachers about grades and tutorials, you want to work with them on self-advocating. You just want to be able to build relationships and just grow good humans out of your Tiger Time class. So a little bit more about Tiger Time is the curriculum is in Schoology. There is some autonomy with the curriculum, but there are some things that are provided each week that we do expect to happen. For example, study hall and how you do your mentoring with your students. That's a structure that while I will provide suggestions, you can make that your own. Building community, there just should be an activity each week that builds community. I do provide a few in the beginning especially, but you want to be able to meet the needs of your students and however that may look. Now, there are lessons occasionally on campus practices, reminders about our cell phone policies, reminders about our anonymous tip line system, iHelp. um, the lessons that are on campus practices, the announcement slides, and the campus broadcast that is created by our broadcast journalism class, those need to be shown to your classes each week. Those are kind of the non-negotiable things. Things that we put into the Tiger Time classroom, we need to be able to deliver that message consistently to all students. That's our vehicle to do that. And so we need everyone teaching those lessons each week. And occasionally, depending on what the lesson was, you may even be asked to send an email to your parents that's pre-drafted. We just ask you to send it out to your Tiger Time class so parents kind of know what we talked about in class that day. So I think that's it for this portion. The other thing in the culture folder is PBIS. And so there are some links in there that you need to go through to learn a little bit more about PBIS at AMS. Thank you.